Welcome to Savvy Business, Life Unscripted, with your host, Christina Rivera, where our guests share their wisdom and valuable business tips, empowering our audience to expand their personal potential.
Hi, Vanessa Judelman. Welcome to Savvy Broadcasting, Life Unscripted. I'm so grateful to have you here this wonderful day. How are you?
Wonderful. Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
You betcha. We are going to have a fun topic today. From doer to leader, mastering the art of leadership. We spoke just briefly before we hit the go button that some people have not a clear picture of what exactly is leadership. You might be fabulous in a career you've chosen. Maybe you're top salesperson, you moved up the ranks, and then now you're leading 20 salespeople, and you might not have the tools to lead because it does take a different. You might be good at one thing, doesn't necessarily translate into being a successful leader. So we're going to talk about that. But before we go there, I just love for you to share a little bit about your background with our audience before we go there.
Sure. Absolutely happy to do that. So my background is actually in education. So I taught at-risk youth for many years, and I had a couple too many binders thrown at my head, and then I had a chair thrown at my head, and I said, you know what, maybe this is a sign that it's time for a career change. So I moved into the area of training and development and corporate training and absolutely loved it. I was in the corporate world for 15 years, and I ran teams. Interestingly enough, I ran very high performing teams, but I also ran teams who struggled. I had people report to me over the years who loved my leadership style. And again, I had people over the years who reported to me that didn't like my leadership style. Mm-hmm. And it was in fact those leaders that I learned the most from, because typically they were wired very differently than me. Mm. So I had to learn from those individuals how to change or adjust my style to meet their needs. I couldn't operate on, well, just do what I would do. Yeah. No, that doesn't work as a leader. And then I've been running my business for 11 years. So that's been, in a very quick nutshell, my trajectory.
That's awesome. And you know, what's interesting about that, you said that, you know, there were some people that didn't like my style. And that's very important, because I think sometimes we just like the positive feedback. No, I don't want to hear the negative feedback, but there's great lessons to be learned actually more in the negative feedback, because not everyone takes in information the same, and they just do life differently.
Yeah. And I think the first step in moving from a doer to a leader is understanding yourself and how you're wired and what makes you tick. So I'm someone who's very direct. I move very quickly. I like to take action. I like things simplified. And I know that with that are strengths and weaknesses. So for all of us, we have strengths and weaknesses, right? And that's fine. It's just part of being human. And so know your strengths, know your weaknesses. So I've had people on my team, as I mentioned before, didn't like my leadership style because they were the opposite. They were very structured, highly detail-oriented, very analytical. What I've learned now over the years is that I must have people like that on my team because they close my gaps. And where early in my career, it frustrated me, now those people are my best allies on my team.
And what's great is once you say you're a business owner and you're hiring out talent to run your business, and maybe you're that overseeing big picture type of person, you need people who can get into the nitty gritty and see the details, because you're going to miss them, even though you think, yeah, I see it. Yeah, I got this. But they're going to catch things you won't. And to another level, you said even one thing I got from an old boss, and he said, if you want to lead on this department one day, you're going to have to get personable, because my attitude when I went to work is like, I'm here to work. Let's get focused. And there's no fun, pretty time until there's like lunch or leaving, like nothing in between. So it's like on button, off button. But he said, these are human beings who you need to interact with, not like machines, but like human beings, you know, get to know them, talk to them. And to me, that's inefficient. Let's get going here. Let's get chop. But, you know, so to your point, there'll be different people responding to different things. You have to be able to meet people where they're at.
I love that story you just shared. It's I think so many of us can relate to that. When I speak with leaders, I'll put on a whiteboard a continuum. And on the left-hand side is task, and on the right-hand side is relationship. And I always say to people, okay, put an X on this line. Where are you right now? And where do you want to be? So people who are over far onto the left side, who are very task-oriented, when you become a leader, you have to move closer to the middle. You have to become relationship-oriented, because why? It's part of your job.
Yeah.
How you have to have high trust in your team. How do you build trust? Well, you have to treat people with respect. You have to listen to them. You have to communicate and collaborate with them. Also, the people on the right-hand side of the continuum are very relationship oriented. They may need to move closer to the middle too.
Yeah.
Because they can't, in the past, maybe you're in a sales role where 90% of your job was based on developing relationships. And that was perfect in that role. But as a leader, you also have to focus on setting strategy and following up with people and creating agendas and holding people accountable. And that would move you closer into the middle.
That's interesting. I'd like to hit on both aspects because I've had leaders and also been in positions where maybe you're more relationship building and you're, say, in a position in a career or whatever, in a job, and you've been in a relationship with many of your associates and built great relationships, but now you're their manager. So how do you set the boundaries so that they know you respect them, but that you have to say, okay, no more fraternizing. We have to kind of put this boundary up. And that doesn't mean I don't like you. Like, how have you seen that best work out?
That is honestly one of the hardest things that I hear from leaders all the time is these people used to be my friends and now I'm their boss, and it's super challenging. And what happens more often than not is those people aren't their friends anymore because of position. Think about it this way. It's your positional power has changed. You move from equals to you're actually someone's boss right now. You can actually fire this person. And so what happens when people get promoted is often their friends stop inviting them to go for lunch and things like that. And so what you have to do is you can't take it personally, right? And you can still say, well, I miss you. Let's meet after work, right? Where maybe you're on neutral ground, where the relationship is a little more neutral. But first of all, if that's happened to you, don't take it personally. It's very normal. I see it all the time. Second of all, you have to build high trust with those individuals. If you already had high trust with them, trust, if you think about it, every relationship has what I call a trust account, right? You put deposits in when you're respectful to someone, you put deposits into your trust account with them. When keep your commitments with them, you put a deposit into your trust account with them. If you already have a trust account with a lot of deposits in and you become somebody's boss, while the dynamic changes, if it's a high trust relationship, the transition will be easier. So that's what I always say to people is really focus on building trust. Then you can have healthy conflict with people. There will be conflict as you move into a new role. And when you have high trust relationships, healthy conflict means people are open to discussing and having conflict around ideas. Healthy conflict is not interpersonal conflict. That's different. It's healthy conflict around ideas. And that you want people to push back and say, you've made changes on our team. And quite frankly, I don't like them. And this is why. You want people to say that, right? Yeah. And so invite healthy conflict. Say to people, I want you to push back. When you share your new vision for the team, your new vision with the team, say to them, here's the vision. Let's all work together on deciding how we're going to execute it. Because the mistake many leaders make is they think they have to have all the answers. And I always say, why? You just because you're a leader, you don't need to have the answers, especially as a new leader, but you do need to have the questions.
Yeah, that's a good differentiation. I think when people move up, they're like, I must never, ever, ever doubt or show doubt. And that's not true. That's the reason you're not doing it all by yourself, why you do have a crew and team members so that they all have their own function, their own add to the whole, and to get their feedback and their valued feedback and see, because they'll see things you won't see, especially if, like, say you're running accounting department. There are different sects of accounting, and each of them will have their own challenges of how they need to get their stuff done. And you might not be in the weeds of that. So to be able to rely on your team and build the trust that you trust them and they can deliver positive feedback that can help you all run things better.
Yeah. And also in terms of delegation, I mean, you have to trust your team in order to delegate to them. And I hear a lot of leaders say, well, I'll just do it myself because it's easier. And so I always say to people, well, how is that working for you? And let's look at what's on your to-do list right now. How would you feel about holding on to all of that 1 year from now? And people shake their heads and say, oh no, I can't. If I'm still doing this a year from now, that's going to be terrible. So then the next question is, well, what do you need to let go of? And then who's the right person to take that on? Right. And you can't just throw it in their lap and say,
Mm-mm.
off you go. You have to, this is a very important part of moving from a doer to a leader, is understanding the delegation process. And that, when someone's new to a task, even if it's a senior person on your team, you have to be very prescriptive with them up front, give them a lot of detail. Again, you don't need to have the answers, but you can have a question, which could be, okay, I want to delegate this to you. What do you think that delegation process could look like? Do you want to do a little bit? Do you want to take it all at once? Try it and I give you feedback. Like, how do you want to approach this? And create a delegation strategy with them.
Yeah. And also allowing them to be part of the plan while making the final decision allows them to feel like I'm not just having things thrown at me. I think also a very important question or thing to focus on together is, where are each of your members at as far as workflow and how much is on their plate? Because I've been called in to consult for businesses saying, hey, we just want you to make everything better. And there's one idea of what the C-suite thinks is going on with it and what needs to be fixed, and then you speak to the individual staff and they have a totally different view. And a lot of them, like say one or two, will be like, I feel like I'm doing 80% of the work of the entire office and everyone else is just like going to lunch, chilling, whatever, and no one seems to respect and understand that. So I think also going along with the how do you call it, the oh my gosh, delegation, that's the word I'm looking for, of tasks, to really get a feedback. Where's everyone stand workflow wise? And if we're going to add something, how do we do that so it doesn't overload anyone?
It's so interesting. I was just listening to a wonderful podcast by Michael Lewis yesterday, and he was talking about experts. He has the first season is on coaches. First season is on referees, second season is on coaches, and the third season of his podcast is on experts. It's excellent. And what he was saying is, whenever a consultant comes into an organization and asks the top people, they never find the answers. So his theory of going 7 levels down.
How many levels down?
The solution to every business issue is 7 layers down in a business. Go CEO, SVP, VP, director, manager, right? Engineer. You got to go right down into the trenches to solve business issues. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is so true. That's another problem. The issue I see with leaders is they're not including the right people in their problem solving if you work for a large organization. Isn't that interesting? 7 levels down to solve problems.
Wow. And that is so impactful, because I mean, I've been in a business once where there was some huge issues with their billing process. And a lot of their customers were like, we're ready to pull, because they got us to sign on the dotted line and the actual deliveries are awesome, but they don't help us any after that. The billing is horrible and certain administrative issues are coming up. And I found the issue actually talking to the mailroom peeps, who just happened to tell me, here's what's going on, la, 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 from a process standpoint, because it was a breakdown of communications and such. And it's amazing that, in a really huge organization, it can be broken down all the way at the bottom and you're not seeing where the hole is.
Absolutely. Yeah. This podcast, by the way, is called Against the Rules. If anyone's interested, it's really good.
That's a fabulous idea. Now, let's say someone today had never really been in a leadership position, and maybe they're working for a mid-sized to enterprise level company, and they're getting the wonderful treat of, guess what? You're going to manage your own team. And they're like, what should they start to pay attention to with entering into this new arena of leadership?
Absolutely. So what I can share with you is that your role's changed. It's okay to be nervous. And you'll just acknowledge that you're going to have to learn new skills, right? I call it new level, new devil. You've moved into a new level. The new level requires new skills. I don't use the word imposter syndrome. It really bothers me because it makes people think they're an imposter and they have a syndrome. I'm like, what? You're not an imposter and you don't have a syndrome. You're a fabulous person. You're super smart. You deserve the promotion. Now go close your gaps and learn new skills. That's it.
Exactly.
That's it. Right? And the definition of confidence that I love best is Mel Robbins. And she talks about confidence is just trying new stuff. So you're going to have to try new stuff. Okay. So what kind of new stuff do you want to try or have to try as a leader? Well, I already talked about self-awareness. You have to really understand your strengths. That's the first pillar of leadership success. The second pillar of leadership success is managing your team. That's your job now. What does that entail? It entails giving coaching, knowing how to coach. There's formal and informal coaching. So formal coaching are things like sitting down and having one-on-ones. Make your one-on-ones short. I don't know what people tell me they spend hours and hours on one-on-ones. Like, why would you do that? Have a very clear agenda. Talk about what are your goals this week? What are you going to do to move your goals forward? What help do you need from me? And is there any other information I can share with you? That's it. That's your coach agenda.
Yeah. And I like what you just said there. What do you need from me to make this happen? Because often I've seen far too often with leaders, managers, supervisors, just, all right, hey, do this. All right, we need it by Friday. Not checking like where they're at. What do you need from me to help you get that deadline completed? Is a really important question.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. So manage your team. So you have to be able to coach formally and informally. Informal coaching is just helping people when they're stuck and asking them what help they need day to day. Then there's the second part is really learning how to develop your people. Again, that's your job.
Yeah.
Coach them. You have to know how to develop them. And included in that is giving feedback. You have to learn how to give constructive feedback. There's so many books on how to, for example, crucial conversations on how to give feedback. Read the book. Get yourself up to speed on how to do that. And then the third thing you need to do is you need to learn how to create a high-performing team, right? And so there's stages that every team goes through. You may have heard of them: forming, storming, norming, and high-performing, right? When a team comes together, you're forming. You're going to go through storming, which means there's going to be a little bit of conflict. That's normal. Just manage the conflict, right? You can't avoid the conflict or it'll escalate. And then norming is when you kind of move through the conflict and your people are coming, really getting a greater sense of what their roles and responsibilities are. And then you get to high performing, where you're gelling. Any team that you see that's high performing, the leader knows it's their job to manage their team, and they've gone step by step through those stages, and they've done it in a very targeted, specific way.
This is great that we're going over this, because one thing I'll get from a lot of companies I've gone into is I think there's some people who actually have gotten promoted and, hey, we got you a little present. You're now a manager of XYZ team. Some people just don't want to be in charge of people. It's like, that's just not my jam, or that's not something I desire to do. It doesn't make me excited to get up in the morning. And you should be honest with yourself and say, okay, that's not where I want to be. Maybe I want to be top salesperson and bring in all your cash, but I don't necessarily want to lead the team, even though I'm top salesperson. That doesn't translate into I want to manage people.
Well, it's a different job.
Yeah,
so if you're this top salesperson, I love being in sales and I love working with clients. It's my sweet spot. It makes me happy. Do I want a different job of leading salespeople? It's a different job.
It is. Completely.
I don't realize it's a different job. Do I want a different job, or do I like my current job?
Yeah. And I think that's where the doing comes part, is that people are so used to, I'm really a jam at, at sales or whatever. And so they want to keep doing that. And if other salespeople are having problems, or I'll just help Joe or Sally or whatever. But no, now your job is to manage your team and help them be their best, reach their fullest potential. And and there is a lot of books to do that if that's something you're excited about. And you mentioned something else about imposter syndrome. I recall many years ago, my boss said, hey, this is not specifically called a leadership position, but we need it. So basically, we're going to ask you to work with the legal team and manage all of the collectors and stuff. And here you go. And he brought like this huge stack of legal documents. Said, you're welcome. And so it comes with $11,000 pay increase. I was like, I like the $11,000 pay increase, but I don't know anything about legal. So I was kind of wanting to run home, hide under the bed. But here's something interesting about when you do level up, and it is uncomfortable. It's also really exciting. A year out from there, I had learned so many new skills that was so exciting and made my life so rich, and my work life so rich, that I'd also put out there to anyone that, don't run from possible opportunities. They could be really exciting in your career and vocation.
Yeah. And it goes back to the definition of confidence: trying new things. That's how you're going to build your confidence. Try new things and know that you're going to have some failures along the way. And that's okay. Don't beat yourself up if you have a failure. Rather say to yourself, let's face facts. Nobody likes to fail. If I said to those, anybody listening, tell me about a time when you failed and did you enjoy that? They say, no, terrible, right? Nobody likes failing. However, it's how you deal with it. Do you beat yourself up, right? And say, forget it, I'm giving up? Or do you say, that was tough, that was not enjoyable, and what did I learn from that?
Mm.
What will I do differently next time?
Yeah. Absolutely. And this is one of the questions they ask a lot on job interviews. What is your weaknesses? What is your strength? And people say, well, I'm just too darn perfect. That's my weakness. Instead, I think it's good to come at it just like what you said. Explain for them a time you kind of did something not so good. You made a mistake at work, but here's what I learned from that and how I turned it around. Then you take that weakness and you make it into lemonade.
Yeah, when I do training, when I facilitate training sessions with a group of leaders, I'll often say to them, okay, everybody, put up your hand if you've never made a mistake before in business. And of course, nobody's hand goes up, right? We're human. You are going to make a mistake. It has nothing to do with whether you're successful or a failure. It has to do with being human. The success failure part, again, is how you deal with it. Do you sweep it under the rug? Do you blame someone else? We often see people blame other departments. Well, that's not going to do well for your trust account with your colleagues in a different department if you blame them for your mistakes. Own it. In fact, when you own a mistake, it's a deposit in your trust account with that person. You increase your trust with them.
Boom. You mentioned something so important. We've gone to trust. I've heard you say several times, building the trust account is so important with your team. And one thing I recall, I had a boss where it was actually, he owned the company and it was a very small company. And he had made a boo-boo that cost the company several hundreds of thousands of dollars. We lost a huge order. And because of that, we didn't get a bonus that year. Now, we were all used to getting our Christmas bonus. We were so excited, but I had so much respect for him when he got up there at Christmas, after Christmas get together, lunch, whatever, and said, I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. I did this deal and I did something wrong that caused this order to not go through. I take full responsibility, but because of my error, I unfortunately cannot give a bonus this year. And it was really, really hard for him. I know it felt horrible for him, but I had so much respect and it built my trust account with him to see him come up there and make himself that vulnerable.
One of the reasons that is because when you're transparent with people, you build trust.
Yeah.
So that is a beautiful story. I love that story about a leader who was dealing with the tough stuff in a way that built trust because he was so transparent.
It was awesome. A great story. Yeah. Well, we could go on much longer. I know we could, Vanessa, but I don't want anyone to leave without finding how they can find out more about you, get in contact with you. How can they do that?
Oh, for sure. So my company is called Mosaic People Development. You can reach me at mosaicpd.com. And what I always tell people to do is if you go onto my blog, I send out a weekly blog of very practical leadership tips. So head to my website and sign up for my blog. And once a week, you're going to get really practical leadership strategies in your inbox.
That's awesome. So if anyone is just getting started or is just about to enter into a leadership role, they'll not want to miss getting on your blog so they can find out how they can be the best leader they can and lead their team to their fullest potential. Thank you so much, Vanessa, for coming to Savvy Broadcasting today.
Thank you so much.
Looking for a hilarious read? Well, check out my latest book, My Crazy Roommates. The names have been changed to protect the deranged. Step into the wild and unpredictable world of young adulthood in the heart of New York City. Brace yourself for a roller coaster ride through the trials, tribulations, and hilarious moments of shared living spaces with a colorful cast of characters. Fasten your seatbelt and get ready to laugh, cringe, and maybe shed a tear as you delve into the pages of My Crazy Roommates. So get your copy today, available at Amazon.com.